There's barely any brawlers that could boast just as turbulent of a history as Clancy's, and that's saying a lot. From probably one of the most broken brawlers of all time on release, to one of the worst brawlers of all time, to returning back to the S tier, to returning to somehow a sort of balanced brawler. In this video, we'll take a look at his basics and then talk about this extensive history of his balancing, and where it all went wrong for him. Let's start out with the basics. Clancy has solid health at 7600 and has a trait in which he gains tokens when his attacks hit enemies. It takes 6 hits from him to go from stage 1 to stage 2, and 14 to go from stage 2 to stage 3. At stage 1, Clancy shoots a single paintball at enemies. His range is 7.67 tiles and he has a normal movement speed, dealing 1400 damage per paintball. At stage 2, he shoots 2 paintballs and deals 1500 damage. At stage 3, the final stage, he deals 1600 damage, shoots 4 paintballs with 2 diagonal paintballs, and has a very fast movement speed. Clancy's super sees him shoot 2 streams of 6 paintballs in a cone shape, each dealing 1200 damage at a 5.67 tile range. At stage 2, he charges his super faster with each main attack and super hit, and the range becomes 8.33 tiles. At stage 3, the paintballs deal 1400 damage, and gains even more supercharge with each main attack and super hit. Finally, the super also deals more damage with more range. The basics out of the way, let's get to talking about Clancy. First of all, he's definitely a very similar brawler in concept to Surge. Both brawlers progress throughout the game, starting off relatively weak, and growing stronger by doing well in the game, mainly by hitting shots. Both also have pretty similar matchups, being very good against tanks and less than stellar against throwers and snipers, especially at their lower levels. However, they have one massive difference: what happens when they die. One of Surge's biggest weaknesses is the fact that he loses his upgrades on death, forcing him to build all the way back up, and therefore making playing Surge, especially at higher levels, a much more cautious affair. It also is why Surge's stage 2 star power was so essential for him for so long. But back to Clancy, he doesn't have the same weakness as Surge, which fundamentally makes him a different brawler, and therefore also balanced differently. Before we start talking about his history, let's talk briefly about Clancy's usability in certain game modes. With how he works, he's better for more long-term game modes where the game is guaranteed to go on longer, and therefore allowing Clancy to have more of a chance to not only get to stage 3, but also make use of it. This is why modes like Knockout, which is not only round-based but also more sniper-based, are much more worse for Clancy. However, modes like Gem Grab and Brawl Ball, which are more close range but also longer, are much better for Clancy. Finally, Heist is actually a solid game mode if you're actually good with Clancy, as his super can deal unfathomable amounts of damage to the safe. Now let's turn back the clock and return to the abomination that was Clancy's release. On release, to say he was broken would be an understatement. His damage was completely overtuned, and it's especially his super damage, basically turning him into probably the highest DPS brawler in the game at the time. Besides, charging the super was quite easy as well, as the charge rate was higher as well as the recharge rate. Furthermore, his movement speed was completely unjustified for someone with the sheer amount of DPS as him. He could basically outspeed you and then immediately team up your whole team with a broken super and then get his super back. Finally, his gadgets seal the deal, with his dash gadget being able to stun on release, making escaping even more difficult, and his other gadget allowing him to get his tokens up and not his funny up. Basically, all of this combined to make Clancy probably one of the most oppressive brawlers of all time, though that's seeming to become a dime a dozen these days. Of course, being this broken didn't come without consequences, which came soon after with massive nerfs. He got huge nerfs to his super damage, super charge rate, and his recharge rate. Of course, these nerfs barely did anything, basically ignoring most of his problems. So they went and did a part 2 to his nerfs, this time utterly nuking him, but this time where it hurt, destroying his stage 1 and his stage 2. If this wasn't enough, they decided to beat the dead horse by murking his movement speed at stage 3, burying Clancy into the ground. Well, not fully buried, because he would get fully buried by, funnily enough, the gadget rework. Clancy's token gadget suddenly became a whole lot worse, as the cooldown was now much worse than his original cooldown when he only had 3 or 4 gadgets. Furthermore, once he got to stage 3, the gadget would be completely useless, leaving him without any gadgets left. And his other gadget, which had already been heavily nerfed, was just not good enough to cover for the value of the token gadget. So where did it all go wrong? Well, the moment Supercell decided nerfing his stage 1 and stage 2 forms heavily in comparison to his stage 3. These forms were already relatively balanced, especially stage 1. Nerfing them harder simply made him extremely frustrating to play, as he would basically be playing most of the game as a useless character, in a very small amount of time playing him as an actually playable character. Furthermore, this made him even more of a noob stomper than he already was. Against noobs, he could easily farm attacks on enemies, easily getting to stage 3 and then shredding people without having to worry about dying and losing progress, unlike Surge. However, against actually good players, his stage 1 and stage 2 were so unplayable that you couldn't get out of them and would be stuck in them for basically the entire game. Funnily enough, after a while, as one of, and at points, the worst brawler in the game, Clancy got a rework of sorts, making it easier to hit stage 2 and stage 3 but nerfing his star power. I mean, this helped a little bit, but it was just not enough to help a brawler that was basically the worst in the game. Furthermore, why would you nerf a part of Clancy when he's such at a low spot in the meta, but not give him enough buffs to balance it out? This ended up being sort of a nothing burger rework, and we had to wait a little bit longer for an actual real rework. But we did get it. Clancy got a massive rework, in which his super was nerfed, and the super charge rate was nerfed, while his main attack damage was increased for his first 2 stages, among others. This was actually a pretty solid rework, addressing the things that needed to be changed with Clancy, being a very weak first 2 stages and a very strong super. However, he still struggled heavily even with the rework, leading brawlstars to return with massive buffs. He got buffs to a lot of stuff, including his health, main attack spread, main attack range, and gadget cooldowns. Once again, Clancy was overtuned like crazy, with the attack range buff being especially egregious. All of these buffs combined to shoot him to the S tier, dominating the meta for a couple of weeks before finally getting nerfed with an attack range nerf. And surprisingly, that was all it really took to slowly push Clancy down to being a balanced brawler, having his weaknesses buffed and his strengths nerfed, though it only took about 2 years. Now let's talk about his unlockables, starting with his gadgets. Clancy's first gadget is Snappy Shooting, seeing him gain double tokens for 5 seconds. This is a very solid gadget, letting Clancy get out of the earlier stages easier, but it's nowhere near as good as it once was. Clancy's second gadget is Tactical Retreat, seeing him dash 3.33 tiles and gain 1 ammo. This is actually a solid gadget, and especially in the earlier stages, letting Clancy get close to enemies, which is vital for being able to level up. Though, like the other gadget, it used to be much better. Clancy's first star power sees him start the match with 2 tokens. This is another solid star power, giving him very important tokens, especially at the worst stage, which is stage 1. Of course, letting him get out of it quicker. Clancy's second star power sees him reload all of his ammo on every enemy kill. This is actually another pretty solid star power, but it is a bit more risky to get value from, requiring him to actually kill enemies. Basically, this star power is better for later stages, and the other is better for earlier stages. Overall, pretty good unlockable design, to be honest. Clancy's Hypercharge sees him pierce enemies with his super paintballs, and then they return to him, dealing damage again. The problem with this super Hypercharge is that most of the time it's just overkill. With how much damage Clancy's regular super deals, you'll probably get the kill anyway. Furthermore, the charge rate is just too much for how much value you're actually getting out of the Hypercharge. And finally, one of the best modes for its use, Heist, got a rework to make the Hypercharge basically useless compared to the super. Overall, Clancy has definitely had one of the most turbulent and unbalanced histories of any brawler. Fumble after fumble in his balancing caused him to be utterly broken, then being utterly trash, then being broken again, though it seems brawlstars finally got their act together to make him balanced. However, there is an elephant that will soon need to be addressed. How will they balance Clancy's buffies? As always, if you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe to help support the channel. If you want to support the content even further, become a member for some special perks like helping out on videos or choosing PowerPoint brawlers. And finally, watch this video, or check out this playlist, or join the Discord server, or check out my music channel if you like the music in the video.